The biting wind whipped at Elias's face, carrying the scent of salt and something acrid, like burnt hope. Below, the churning gray of the ocean crashed against the jagged cliffs, a relentless symphony of despair. He stood at the edge, the crumbling precipice a metaphor for his life. 10 years. 10 years he clawed his way to the top, only to have it all ripped away. His company, his reputation, his family's legacy, all gone, swallowed by betrayal so deep it felt like a physical wound. Now, he was here, on this desolate cliff, the world a blur of pain and regret. He thought of his father, a man of quiet strength, who had built the company from nothing. Resilience, Elias, he'd said, his voice rough but kind. It's not about how hard you fall, but how you rise. But Elias felt like he was falling into an abyss with no bottom. A sudden gust of wind almost took him over the edge. He stumbled, his heart leaping into his throat. Fear, sharp and cold, pierced through the numbness. Was this it? A final, ignominious end? As the wind subsided, a strange clarity washed over him. He wasn't ready. Not yet. A flicker of defiance sparked within him. His father's words echoed again, and this time they resonated with a different meaning. It wasn't about denying the fall, but about choosing what came after. He straightened, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the stormy sky met the unforgiving sea. The storm within him hadn't abated, but a fragile seed of determination had been planted. He would not let this be his end. He would rise. Turning away from the edge, he began to walk. He didn't know where he was going, but each step was a victory. He was moving. He was alive. The next few weeks were a blur of survival. He found work at a remote fishing village, the labor brutal and exhausting. He mended nets, hauled catches, and slept in a cramped, damp room. The work stripped him bare, physically and emotionally. There was no time to dwell on the past, only the present moment and the struggle to endure. The villagers were a hardy, taciturn lot, weathered by years of battling the elements. They offered no pity, but they respected his work ethic. He learned to read the sea, to anticipate the storms, to find strength in the rhythm of the tides. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, an old fisherman named Silas sat beside him, mending a torn net. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and companionable. "You've seen the deep," Silas said, his voice raspy like the sea. "The darkness. But you're still here." Elias nodded, his throat tight. "The sea takes," Silas continued, "but it also gives. It teaches. It shows you what you're made of." Elias looked at the old man, his eyes, the color of the stormy sea, filled with a wisdom that transcended words. He realized Silas wasn't just talking about the ocean. He was talking about life. Days turned into months. Elias's body grew stronger, his hands calloused and skilled. But more importantly, his spirit began to heal. The bitterness that had consumed him slowly began to recede, replaced by a quiet resolve. He started to think about the future, not with fear, but with a cautious hope. He learned of a small, struggling fishing cooperative in a neighboring village, a place where fishermen pooled their resources and shared the risks and rewards. It was a long shot, but it was a chance to rebuild not just his life, but something meaningful. The journey to the neighboring village was arduous, a trek through treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather. But Elias pressed on, driven by a newfound purpose. He carried with him the lessons of the sea, the resilience of the villagers, and the memory of his father's words. When he finally reached the cooperative, he found a group of weary but determined fishermen, their faces etched with hardship but their eyes still holding a spark of hope. He shared his story, his voice rough with honesty and vulnerability. He spoke of his past, his fall, and his determination to rise again. The fishermen listened in silence, their expressions unreadable. Elias felt a familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. Was he a fool to think he could find redemption here? After a long moment, the leader of the cooperative, a woman named Maria, stepped forward. Her gaze was steady and unwavering. "We have little," she said, her voice firm but kind, "but we share what we have. If you are willing to wake, to learn, and to contribute, you are welcome here." Tears welled up in Elias's eyes, a mixture of gratitude and relief. He had found a lifeline. The work was even harder than before, the hours long and the risks ever present. But Elias threw himself into it with a passion he hadn't known he possessed. He learned the intricacies of their fishing methods, the delicate balance of their ecosystem, and the importance of trust and cooperation. He also discovered that the cooperative was struggling against a powerful adversary, a wealthy corporation that was using destructive fishing practices to maximize their profits, threatening the livelihoods of the local fishermen and the fragile marine environment. Fear, the old familiar enemy, reared its head again. But this time, it was accompanied by something else, a fierce protectiveness. He had found a community, a purpose, and he would not stand by and watch it be destroyed. Elias began to organize. He used his business acumen, honed in the world he had lost, to develop a sustainable business plan for the cooperative, one that would allow them to compete with the corporation without sacrificing their values. He rallied the fishermen, inspiring them with his own story of resilience and hope. He also sought allies, reaching out to environmental groups and local communities, building a coalition of support. It was a daunting task, fraught with challenges and setbacks. The corporation was powerful and ruthless, and they didn't hesitate to use every means at their disposal to protect their interests. There were times when Elias felt like giving up, when the odds seemed insurmountable. But then he would remember the faces of the fishermen, their unwavering determination, and the words of his father. He would remember the lessons of the sea, the ebb and flow of life, the constant struggle against the storm. And he would keep fighting. The conflict escalated. A David and Goliath battle played out against the backdrop of the vast and unforgiving ocean. There were moments of triumph and moments of despair, moments of courage and moments of fear. But through it all, Elias and the fishermen stood together, united by their shared purpose. One day, they received a tip about an illegal fishing operation being conducted by the corporation, a blatant violation of environmental regulations. It was a risky move, but Elias knew they had to act. They had to expose the corporation's wrongdoing and hold them accountable. Under the cover of darkness, Elias and a small group of fishermen set out to gather evidence. The sea was treacherous at night, the waves crashing against their small boat, the wind howling like a banshee. But they pressed on, driven by their unwavering resolve. They found the corporation's ship, its powerful lights illuminating the illegal operation. The scene was even worse than they had imagined, a brutal and systematic destruction of marine life. As they gathered evidence, they were spotted. The corporation's men, armed and dangerous, gave chase. A desperate race ensued, a battle between the small fishing boats and the corporation's powerful vessel. Elias, at the helm, navigated the treacherous waters with a skill born of necessity and desperation. He felt the cold spray of the ocean on his face, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He knew that their lives, and the future of the cooperative, depended on their escape. Just when it seemed like they were cornered, Elias saw a narrow passage between the rocks, a passage that only a skilled and daring captain would tempt. He steered the boat into the passage, the waves crashing around them, the rocks looming menacingly on either side. It was a gamble, a desperate move. But Elias had learned to trust his instincts, to listen to the whispers of the sea. The corporation ship, unable to navigate the narrow passage, was forced to abandon the chase. Elias and the fishermen had escaped. The evidence they gathered proved to be damning. The corporation was exposed, their illegal operations shut down, their reputation tarnished. It was a hard-won victory, a testament to the courage and determination of Elias and the fishermen. In the aftermath of the conflict, the cooperative flourished. Elias, no longer a broken man, had found his purpose. He had rebuilt his life, not on the foundations of his past success, but on the bedrock of resilience, community, and hope. He stood once again at the edge of the cliff, the same cliff where he had once contemplated despair. But this time, he felt no fear, only a profound sense of peace. The ocean stretched before him, vast and powerful, a constant reminder of the challenges he had overcome and the journey he had taken. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be more storms, more challenges, more moments of doubt. But he also knew that he had the strength to face them. He had learned that true strength was not about avoiding the fall, but about rising after it, stronger and more determined than before. As the sun rose, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, Elias took a deep breath of the salty air. He was ready for whatever the future held. He was standing on the edge of dawn, and he was ready to embrace the day.